The fog of dawn was shattered by the roar of engines. 3 Coast Guard assault boats cornered the lone fisherwoman. They thought they had trapped a terrorist arms dealer. They were about to make the biggest mistake of their careers. The first hint of trouble wasn't the sight of the boats, but a subtle discord in the rhythm of the sea. At 4:47 a.m., in the heart of the Gulf of Maine, Anya Petrova felt it through the hull of her vessel, the Nomad. It was a low-frequency thrum, an unnatural vibration that cut through the ancient groan of the waves. Her ice-blue eyes, weathered by 3 years of sun and salt, scanned the thick blanket of fog. She was hauling in her nets, the cold, wet ropes coiling at her feet like sleeping serpents. To any observer, she was just a 30-year-old woman working a hard life, her blonde hair, bleached by the elements, tied back in a messy, functional ponytail. But her hands, though calloused, moved with an economy of motion that spoke of something other than fishing. Then they came. Not 1, but 3 matte gray assault boats, slicing through the mist like sharks. They weren't on a standard patrol, they moved with predatory coordination, fanning out to form a perfect tactical triangle around her 42-foot trawler. A blinding spotlight erupted from the lead vessel, pinning the Nomad in its glare. Anya didn't flinch. Her mind, a machine honed in the crucibles of forgotten war zones, was already processing. The lead boat was a response boat medium, but its approach angle was too aggressive. The crew, visible now, wore full tactical gear, not standard boarding uniforms. And mounted on the bow, manned and ready, was the unmistakable silhouette of a .50 caliber machine gun. "Fishing vessel the Nomad, this is the United States Coast Guard," a voice boomed over a loudspeaker, sharp and authoritative. "Cut your engines immediately. Prepare for an emergency boarding." Anya's heart didn't race, it settled into a slow, heavy beat. Her cover, the painstakingly constructed identity of a reclusive fisherwoman, was too good. For 3 years, she had lived this life, her unusual nighttime trips and sophisticated electronics all part of a deep-cover operation to map an arms trafficking network. Now, that very authenticity was about to condemn her. The irony was a bitter taste in her mouth, more acrid than the black coffee steaming in her thermos. She raised her hands slowly, deliberately, making sure they were visible. Her mind wasn't on her innocence, it was on the consequences. The network she was infiltrating wasn't just moving guns, they were planning something catastrophic on American soil. And the very people she was trying to protect were about to tear her operation to shreds. The metallic clang of the boarding ramp hitting her deck echoed across the still water. Lieutenant Commander Marcus Thorne stepped aboard with the unshakable confidence of a man who believed he was making history. He was young, sharp, with a jawline that seemed carved from granite and an Ivy League certainty in his eyes. Behind him, 5 heavily armed officers fanned out, their weapons trained on Anya. "Ma'am, I'm Lieutenant Commander Thorne," he announced, his voice crisp with the weight of federal authority. "We have credible intelligence that this vessel is being used for illegal trafficking operations. You are being detained." Anya remained silent, her expression a mask of impassive calm. This unnerved Thorne more than any protest would have. He saw the weathered hands, the tired lines around her eyes, but there was a stillness to her, a coiled potential that reminded him of the instructors at Quantico. He had been tracking this boat for 8 months, building a case file thick with suspicious nighttime runs, satellite images of her in nonsensical fishing locations, and financial records that screamed money laundering. "Rodriguez, start with the hold," Thorne commanded, his voice sharp. "Martinez, wheelhouse. Check for hidden compartments. I want every inch of this deck searched." As his team moved with practiced efficiency, Thorne studied Anya. She wasn't panicking. She was observing, calculating. It was the composure of a professional, and it sent a flicker of unease through him. He pushed it aside. The evidence was overwhelming. "Commander, you need to see this," Rodriguez's voice crackled over the radio from below. Thorne's pulse quickened. He left 2 men guarding Anya and descended into the hold. The smell of fish and diesel was thick, but behind a false wall in a refrigerated compartment, tucked between crates of cod, they found it. The discovery silenced the entire boarding team. It wasn't just a few handguns. Stacked in waterproof Pelican cases were military-grade marvels, 3 FN SCAR-H battle rifles, a dozen encrypted satellite phones, and several thermal imaging scopes. It was a terrorist's shopping list. "Jesus Christ," Martinez whispered, his flashlight beam trembling slightly. Thorne felt a surge of adrenaline and vindication. This was bigger than he could have imagined. Back on deck, he approached Anya with a new, graver intensity. "Ma'am, this is now a federal terrorism investigation," he said, his voice low. "I strongly advise you to cooperate." He noticed one of his older, more experienced petty officers watching Anya not with aggression, but with a look of deep, furrowed confusion. The woman's calm was simply not normal. Thorne ignored him. He was the one in command. "I need to search you for weapons," Thorne stated, his hand moving to his sidearm as a precaution. As he began to pat down, his fingers brushed against something hard and rectangular sewn into the lining of her jacket. Official documents. Before he could investigate further, he decided to secure her. The arrest was the priority. He pulled out a pair of steel handcuffs, the metal glinting coldly in the morning sun. "Anya Petrova, you are under arrest for federal weapons trafficking, conspiracy, and providing material support to a foreign terrorist organization." He moved behind her, ready to lock the cold steel around her wrists. The sound of the ratchet clicking open was the only sound in the tense silence. He was about to close the first cuff. "Lieutenant Commander," Anya's voice was barely a whisper, yet it cut through the air with the precision of a scalpel. Thorne paused, annoyed by the interruption. "You have the right to remain silent." "Protocol Nightingale," she breathed, her voice so low he almost missed it. "Authorization Sierra Kilo 9er. Authentication. Gold Spectre 2-5. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. The steel handcuffs slipped from Thorne's numb fingers, clattering onto the deck with a sound that seemed to echo into infinity. The blood drained from his face, leaving his skin a ghastly white. His pupils, which seconds before had held the triumphant gleam of a predator, were now wide with pure, unadulterated shock. He stared at the back of her head as if she had just sprouted wings and a halo. Those weren't random words. They were a sequence so highly classified that even knowing of its existence required a clearance level far beyond his own. It was a ghost code, a phrase reserved for situations of absolute, nation-threatening crisis. If she was bluffing, it was a bluff of incomprehensible genius. If she wasn't, he hadn't just made a mistake. He had committed an act of operational treason against his own country. His world tilted on its axis, the deck of the boat suddenly feeling like the edge of a cliff. Thorne's hand trembled as he fumbled for his secure satellite phone. His men stared at him, their confident postures dissolving into confusion at the sight of their leader's sudden breakdown. He dialed a number he prayed he would never have to use. The call connected almost instantly. JSOC Operations. "This is Colonel Rostova." The voice on the other end was female, calm, and carried an authority that felt like a physical weight. Thorne's mouth was desert dry. "Colonel, this is Lieutenant Commander Thorne, U.S. Coast Guard. I have a situation. An individual is claiming Protocol Nightingale authorization." He could barely get the words out. The silence that followed was the most terrifying sound he had ever heard. It stretched for 10 seconds, then 20. He could hear the faint, frantic clicking of a keyboard in the background. When Colonel Rostova spoke again, her voice was no longer calm. It was a blade of solid ice. "Lieutenant Commander, give me your exact coordinates. Now. And describe the individual." Thorne stammered out the location and a description of Anya, each word feeling like a nail in his own coffin. Another agonizing minute passed. "Thorne," Rostova's voice returned, stripped of all rank and courtesy. "You have just arrested Major Anya Petrova of the United States Army's Special Forces. She is the lead field operative in Operation Gold Spectre, a multi-year deep cover mission to prevent a dirty bomb from being smuggled into the port of Boston. The phone nearly slipped from Thorne's grasp. His knees felt weak. "Ma'am, we found weapons, military-grade equipment." "The weapons you found are part of her cover," Rostova cut him off, her voice laced with a fury so cold it burned. "The suspicious activity you've been tracking for 8 months was our most valuable intelligence asset, preventing an attack that would make 9/11 look like a firecracker. You can start praying now, Commander. Because if that bomb goes off, the first drop of blood will be on your hands. Stand down. Release her. And do not, under any circumstances, let her out of your sight. You have compromised everything." At that moment, Rodriguez, the officer from the hold, emerged on deck, his face flushed with excitement. "Commander. There are files down there. Photos of known terrorists, shipping manifests. This woman was running some kind of major intel op." His triumphant words hung in the air, a perfect, brutal epitaph for Thorne's career. Within the hour, the sky filled with the thrum of rotors. 3 UH-60 Blackhawks, painted a non-reflective black with no identifying markings, descended from the haze like specters. They weren't military, they were something else, something that operated in the spaces between official government agencies. They landed on the deck of the Coast Guard cutter with impossible precision. The men who disembarked wore impeccably tailored dark suits, but they moved with the lethal grace of apex predators. They didn't introduce themselves as Smith and Jones, they didn't introduce themselves at all. They walked past Thorne as if he were a piece of deck equipment, their focus entirely on Anya. The silent, utter dismissal of his authority was a more profound humiliation than any reprimand. Colonel Rostova was the last to arrive, her face a mask of controlled disappointment. "Major," she said to Anya, her voice low. "Damage assessment." Anya's report was clinical, detached, and utterly devastating. The network she had infiltrated, a cell with direct ties to Hezbollah, had gone completely dark the moment Thorne's operation was initiated. An informant she had spent 18 months cultivating, a man who was about to give her the location of the bomb's core components, had been found in the trunk of a car at a Boston airport parking garage 2 hours ago. He could no longer speak. 3 years of work, of living a lie, of sacrificing every piece of a normal life, had been vaporized in a single morning. Thorne listened, his horror mounting with every word. He felt a desperate need to defend himself. "Sir, we were following legitimate intelligence." One of the men in suits turned to him, his eyes devoid of any emotion. "Lieutenant Commander," he said, his voice flat. "The people who fed you that intelligence were the same people Major Petrova was hunting. They suspected a leak in their organization. They couldn't find her, so they used your agency as a bloodhound to flush her out for them. You became a free house-cleaning service for international terrorists. Congratulations." The full, sickening scope of the manipulation crashed down on Thorne. He hadn't just made a mistake. He had been a pawn, a willing, arrogant tool in the enemy's hands. While the damage control team worked, methodically confiscating equipment that would never see a courtroom, Thorne watched the life he had built crumble into ash. The lives that would be lost, the attacks that would now happen, that was his legacy. As the black helicopters prepared to depart, taking Anya away to a new identity and a new life in the shadows, Thorne approached her hesitantly. His career was over, but he needed to say something. "Major, is there anything, any way to fix this?" Anya looked at the man who had, with the best of intentions, destroyed her world. She felt a surprising lack of anger, replaced by a profound, weary sadness. He was a symptom, not the disease. "Lieutenant Commander," she said, her voice quiet but firm, her ice-blue eyes meeting his for the first time with something other than professional detachment. "The real enemy isn't always the one hiding in the shadows. Sometimes, it's our own arrogance. Today, your arrogance cost us all." She turned and walked toward the waiting helicopter without a backward glance. As she boarded, she saw one of the suited operatives on the stern of her boat, painting over the name The Nomad with thick black paint. It was a final, symbolic erasure of her existence. The helicopter lifted off, its rotor wash whipping across Thorne's face, leaving him utterly alone on the deck, surrounded by his crew who now refused to meet his eyes. He had been abandoned by his own world. The official report would state the incident was a case of mistaken identity during a classified training exercise. Thorne would be quietly transferred to a desk job in Alaska, his silence bought with the remnants of his career. The terrorists, their operation now secure, would find new ways and new weapons. But this story raises a chilling question. In a world of secrets and manipulation, when a hero is forced to look like a villain to do their job, how do we tell the difference? A well-intentioned mistake can cause more damage than a malicious attack. Who do you think bears the ultimate responsibility here? The ambitious Commander Thorne, the cunning terrorists who played the system, or the flawed system itself? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Comment respectfully as we discuss this complex issue. If you appreciate stories that explore the gray areas of morality, please like this video, share it with someone who will find it thought-provoking, and subscribe to our channel for more content that challenges the way you see the world.